Let's start the search. Okay, this is the exercise where we are going to start the specific search for the self, the central observer, so let's get going. Let's sit on a couch, put your earbuds in, put down the phone, and let's rest our gaze on something outside. Something that our attention naturally rests on. Now we've already gone over the topic that we can't be identical to a thought. A thought comes up and goes away, and we clearly haven't disappeared when it disappears. If you agree with that statement, then that will help us in this exercise. Let's do that one really quick. As you look outside, think the thought, will this be interesting? Notice when the thought completely subsides, including any waning residue, and continue your gaze on the object. Let's do it one more time. I hope you realized again that even though the thought is gone, you were aware of the thought. Now we've gone over where we are going to search for the self. So again, take your pointer finger and point where you feel that we will find the central observer looking at the object out the window. Start by pointing at your knee, and then turn your finger around towards your chest. And start moving your finger up towards your head. And notice the moment that you feel that the pointer finger has changed. Maybe a visceral feeling that it is now really pointing at you. For me, I noticed a strong sense of being pointed at when my finger was pointed to a spot approximating a place behind my eyes. Kind of where I would expect my brain to be. Now move your pointer finger to one of your ears and notice if there is a sense that the finger is not pointing at you like it was before. And then move the pointer finger back and stop when it feels that it is pointing most directly at you, the central observer. Okay. Put down your finger and rest your gaze at the object in front of you, hopefully something outside in nature. If you agree that the strongest sense of self was located somewhere behind your eyes, in the center of your head, then I believe we are ready to start the search. This lesson is a little abstract, but we have to start by creating an imaginary line between the object that is being looked at in the visual field and where you take your central self to be, the precise location that you were just pointing at. We clearly can't perform this search with our eyes. That wouldn't even make sense. The search is similar to when we notice when a thought subsides. You know that sense of experience as being real, observable, recognizable. But we aren't searching with eyes, ears, smell, etc. We're searching our experience from the first person, with observations that are as real as vision, but not using our typical sense organs. Get it? The goal here is to try and start triangulating where we would expect to find our central observer. We are taking that imaginary line with the plan to search where the line ends. As I look at the object, I'm going to follow this imagined line. And to be clear, I don't see a line, but I'm taking the imaginary line from the tree branch that I'm looking at back to where I was just pointing. And I'm going to attempt to start searching for the subject that is supposedly observing the visual field right now. I even have frames on my glasses in the peripheral field of view to aid in my search, so I can have an added sense that the self should be findable on this side of the glasses, away from the tree branch out there. I'm even going to add a breath through my nose to aid in a sensory experience that should be between the branch that I'm looking at and where I should find this wizard behind the curtain observing the tree branch. There's a lot of searching going on right now, not with my eyes, but a real search nonetheless. As I look at the branch, what I recognize, paradoxically, is that there isn't a central observer to be found. Let's try to find this central observer by adding more triangulation. Continue looking at the object out the window and create the imaginary line where you were previously pointing. And let's even add the thought, where am I? Don't say it out loud, think it. Now let's wait until it subsides and continue looking at the object. Okay, let's try to find the central observer that is intuitively not only seeing the object, but also recognizing the thought. Let's add the thought again. Where am I? Now, for me personally, I would expect to be able to locate the self somewhere adjacent to the thought. That would be intuitive based on anatomy, the internal-external world physiology that we all know about when doing this experiment from the third person. What in this life is more important to understand than one's life from the first person experience? Continue listening to my experience and let me know if this resembles anything similar to yours. As I look at the tree branch out my window, I have created an imaginary line from the branch towards me, an intuitive location on this side of the central aspect of the visual field. I recognize the frames of my glasses in the periphery of the visual field, and the line is central to the oval appearance of the frames. As I think the thought, where am I? I recognize the thought is obviously other from the tree branch that I'm looking at. Intuitively, if there was something to be found, I would anticipate that there would be a place adjacent to the thought and approximating a place on the continuation of the imaginary line. But as attention has moved from the branch to the thought, I find that paradoxically, it has returned to the branch in the visual field. I momentarily feel a sensation associated with the forehead, but again, attention is back to the branch. Attention either found the central self so fast that it was missed, or it had no place to land and went right back to the branch in the visual field. But it's clear to me that nothing was found resembling a self. Did you notice anything differently? Was your experience similar? Let's do the search once more. Really concentrate, because if you find yourself the central subject to the conscious experience, I would want to know how to find it. Let's look at the object outside the window. Blink and make an approximate imaginary line from the object to where you would likely find the subject. Feel the pressure of the head. And as you continue looking at the object, think the thought, "Where am I?" Notice if you can find a central observer on the receiving end of either of those very real objects that are being noticed. So this is the search. This is what I mean when the search is similar to trying to find the end of the rainbow. You swear it's just right there, but it just can't be found. Play with this exercise this week. Try triangulating in any way you see fit and notice what you find. I want to add a little more to this exercise as we close. I want to add how this can reveal something in my experience, something that I don't want to skip over, even if you might have overlooked it. As I do this exercise, something is very apparent to me and will be the subject of our next exercise. When I create the imaginary line and try to find the end at a central observer, and I think the thought, "Where am I?" and then continue the search for something adjacent to the thought, it becomes apparent over and over again that I'm actually back at the tree branch. A clear recognition is available on top of that. My experience is that there is just the visual field. There actually isn't any imaginary line outside of the visual field. Not because we can't really draw imaginary lines in our visual field, that's clear to me, but rather a line can't leave the visual field because what's aware of the visual field is not outside of the visual field. There's a shift where it's recognized that my conscious experience is that of being the visual field. It actually was the whole time. As the whole visual field is recognized, attention is on the branch. As a sound arises, attention recognizes the sound and then returns more solidly back to the tree branch. A sensation of the foot on the floor moves attention momentarily, and then attention moves back to the tree branch. Thoughts arise, and attention bounces to them, and then returns to the branch. Attention bounces to another object in the visual field, and then returns to the branch. But this whole time, experience has been resting primarily in the visual field, and attention has been what's bouncing around experience. This experience has all the same objects available, including a thought of me over here on this side of experience. But when not wrapped around this intuition, there's freedom to see experience as the flow of the moment. If you recognize that shift away from the subject-object experience to that of the visual field as the visual field, you likely briefly recognize non-dual awareness. It's not like I became a branch. That's ridiculous. The conscious experience is so much more than that. However, I can say that I am more identified as that leaf on the branch, the one that attention is on, than anything I've ever been identified as in my whole life, including any narrative of a story or who I take myself to be. There's no separation. If even for a moment, if I asked you to look for your head, and there was a recognition that the question didn't even make sense, as the experience recognized did not presuppose the need for a head, again, you likely had a moment of non-dual flow state. Anyways, this week, perform the simple exercise of the imaginary line to where you would expect to find the central self, and then a subsequent search adjacent to the thought, "Where am I?" and stress test if you can find the center of experience.